Andy, welcome to the Resilient Man podcast.
Appreciate you for having me on.
Appreciate you being here. So, in the last episode that I did, the Movember special, we had Hayden Thomas and Daniel James on.
Mm-hmm.
And through the podcast, your name cropped up a couple of times.
Okay.
You cropped up as someone who's an inspiration and someone who's had a positive effect on their mental well-being.
Okay.
So, I left that podcast with one question. Who is Andy James?
Oh, I will try and keep this contained in the time that we've got. But what I would say is I am somebody that does know myself quite well these days. And it has been through more adversity than what I would say most go through in one lifetime. I'm fortunate to be able to say that I can tell this story because the story could have been very, very different at a certain point of time, which I will explain a little bit more when we get around to talking about that. But for me to be able to say who is Andy, it's taken a lot of years to figure out, understand, and be accepting of who it is that I am. And I think a lot of the battle trying to figure that out along the way has been who do I actually want to be rather than allowing society to tell me who I should be. So it's, I mean, I didn't know that you were going to, you've kept that close to your belt, that one, because I didn't know you were going to open it in that way. First of all, I just want to quickly say, I mean, thank you to both those guys for just showing the appreciation. And I do obviously know them both very, very well. But to have words like that said about you without really knowing the context of it as well. It's caught me off guard a little bit.
It was all good. It was all positive.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. So yeah, I mean, I appreciate those two and thank you. And yeah, who is Andy? So Andy is somebody that's been through a lot in life. Andy is somebody that is still to this day discovering who he is. My story is one that I hope to be able to continue to share to help others figure out where they are. Maybe they've got questions or they're going through struggles themselves that they're trying to work on or work through. And if I could leave breadcrumbs that help them to figure out where they're going, what they should be doing, what they should be focusing on, then my story is one that's worth telling over and over again on as many platforms as I could put my story to, just because I feel like it's going to help not just men, but it helps everybody. And I feel like to be able to move forwards, knowing that there is hope, that there is opportunity, and what you're currently facing isn't the be all and end all of life, then I think for me to be able to continue to keep telling the story of who is Andy, it's really one that kind of I have to rewind the clocks quite significantly to be able to explain how I got to where I am now, because there would have been a point in time where this conversation would have never happened.
Yeah, I feel like that's a great introduction into your story. So why don't we do that then? Why don't we take us back and give us an overview of growing up and then where you were up until 30?
Yeah.
Took a turn.
Okay, so I mean, I'll do the quick rewind and then a quick fast forward up to 30. So just to give you a bit of context, grew up as kind of like the kid that I didn't really fit in, but I wasn't really misunderstood either. I was quite a well-behaved child growing up. I was very inquisitive. I was very creative, always active. So I was kind of that kid at school where you fit in with good friends, picked on every now and again, maybe a little bit bullied every now and again, but nothing significant that it kind of like ruined the school experience. But there are some, there's specific memories there that kind of stand out, but nothing that really impacted life. Got into my late teens, and it was just really about trying to figure out what I wanted to do at that point. And I was an active person, so I went down the route of studying sports science, qualified in that. The goal was to move out to the States and go into NFL coaching, but certain things at the time kind of put very big hurdles in the way of that happening. So I fell into a hobby and a love that I already had, which was motorsport racing. So I built a business around that, and to be fair, I mean, hindsight looking back, it was probably one of the biggest struggles. It was a self-inflicted struggle at the time, because I wanted it to work so badly, that because it was a hobby and a passion, and I'd won awards all around the world for things that I could do with the business that I built, but it still wasn't enough for it to be the success that I knew that it could be. And at that point in time, there was, again, looking back in hindsight, there was a relationship that I was in that was very, very inflicting of my mental health and what it was that I was going through and how I was managing. And I think a lot of the time through my 20s, it was, you've got to grin and bear this. This is what you've got to do to live with somebody or have a life or build a future. And you was just enduring those pains, because I wasn't happy, but I didn't know what life was supposed to look like either. I had no external guidance around that. I had no support or input on how to navigate any of those things. I was trying to figure everything out myself along the way. So I was doing that in business as well, at the same time as going through quite a brutal relationship. And it got to a point where the relationship and the business kind of all ended at the same time. And the pressure, the stress, the worry, a lot of it was ended in a way where I was not in control of what it was that was ending. So there are things that happened, and I won't go into those. I won't go into the in-depth part of that, but everybody has their own story and they know what it feels like. So what I'd rather focus on is what it actually felt like than the story in itself, because the feeling is what people experience in different circumstances. So that could be a bad relationship. It could be a failing business. It could be trauma or abuse. It could be numerous different things, but the feeling is the thing that actually connects everybody in a similar way, is that they feel a similar thing in going through those different scenarios. So whilst I was going through all of that, I didn't know what I was supposed to do. And it got to a point where the business went, the relationship went, and I left Nottingham. I had nothing to hang around for at that point in time. I did have a son, but again, I didn't have access to seeing him at that point. And so I didn't know what I needed to do. There was a part of me that was looking for escapism, I guess. So I was out and about, out of Nottingham, because I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to go. And I had an argument with my mum over the phone, and I never really have an argument with my mum. So I felt like I needed to come back to Nottingham to apologise. And I did. And it was as soon as she opened the door, that was when the breakdown started. And it was literally, I don't know if it was the permission of somebody saying what's happened, or if it was the realization that I gave myself the space to just say, everything's gone. You need to face this at this point. There was no avoiding it now, because you were in front of somebody that knows you from birth. And I think at that point, that was the turning point. So I was about 28 at that point.
Okay.
I was about 28 years old. Business had gone, wrapped up. The relationship was done, wrapped up. And there was nothing left. I was traveling around on whatever I had in a bank account that was left. And it was obviously dwindling quickly. And it got to that point where, when I did go back and apologize to my mum and the door opened, it was like there wasn't much left for me to be able to stay out and about on anyway. And it was, right, come in, you're going to get yourself sorted. And it was that bit that then it opened up the doors to having the mental health breakdown.
So it was you opening up to your mum. How much did she know about this? Was she aware
She knew the relationship had ended. She knew that there was issues within the business, because she was working for me as well at the time. So there was elements, but I don't think she knew the depth or the pain that I was going through. I think there was an understanding of, well, he's clearly avoiding things, but not knowing how to face any of those very unfortunate situations at that point in time. It was kind of like, I look back on a lot of it now, and I think I can do this. And at the point in time, I would say that it was and still is the hardest thing that I've ever experienced in my life, because there are parts of the story that will kind of unravel from the mental health breakdown point onwards. But I look back now and I actually think I wouldn't be who I am today doing what it is that I do, how I do things, the support that I'm able to give people, and the understanding of being able to do that as well, knowing that they're facing an element of struggle, and I know that I've faced multiple, and it's the confidence in being able to actually support somebody whilst being in that place at that point in time that gives me a skill set that I don't think a lot of people have that have gone through struggle. They've gone through struggle and they kind of build resilience around one issue of struggle. Whereas mine's probably, you could probably ask me multiple, have you struggled with X, Y, or Z? And there's been a struggle there with it, a pretty significant one. So I think I try to use it more so now as a skill set. So being able to open up to my mum at the time and say, like, this is actually what's really gone on. This is what I'm currently facing and what I'm dealing with. It was the acknowledgement of what was actually happening around me, and having somebody to say, okay, tell me about it. But from there, the story then starts to unravel a little bit more with the mental health breakdown side of things.
So just as a summary then, so you're 28, you've moved back in with your mum.
Yep.
Lost your business.
Yep.
Relationship breakdown.
Yep.
Not much money in the bank.
Yep. And lost access to my son as well. Yeah. And inside of all of that, there was identity issues and all sorts there as well, because I was somebody that was working 18 hours a day, 7 days a week. I was pushing myself to be something of somebody that, looking through the eyes of everybody else, expected me to be, whether that be family members, whether that be trying to prove a point to people. It was me trying to figure out who I was and what I was supposed to do with absolutely zero guidance. And I made a lot of mistakes, and some very expensive mistakes as well. And to look back and go, actually, you know what? I did make mistakes because I had nobody else around me to try and figure out, like, well, is this actually a good decision to make or not? So even though the door was open at my mum's at that point in time, it was more of an emotional open than a want to be able to help the physical situations that I was in. That I didn't have the support around, but being able to emotionally but then open up kind of allowed me to get past the hurdle of, what do I need to face?
And up until that point, looking back, would you have done anything differently?
A lot of things, but I think it's kind of, it's a double-edged sword, that is, really, because I look back now and I think there is so much about me as a person that I would do differently. But I don't think I'd be able to see that looking back, being that person that I was at that point in time, because I'm not that person now. So I do feel like my life kind of restarted from my early 30s. And I do have a lot of compartmentalization with what happened previously. So that's just, to explain a little bit, that's just kind of like boxing things in a way where you can store them and not have to re-access them again. So there are certain parts of memory that I don't look back into, but I knew that in hindsight, if I could look back and be who I was now, 110% there'd be things that I'd do differently. I do know that there are certain things about the past that I wouldn't change. The relationship that I was in wasn't the relationship that I should have been in from day one. So I can acknowledge that, and I can say that it wasn't a healthy situation for me to be in. The business, I could have made different decisions with, and the way that I built the business, or the things that I got into with building the business, and the stress levels that I probably self-inflictedly brought upon myself to a degree. But again, it was, you kind of got to go through them and learn. And that's the bit that I think a lot of people are afraid of, when this whole process is a self-learning process. And I think that's the bit that most people try to figure out before they go and do the thing that they need to do, is they need to know that it's going to work.
Yeah.
So yeah, the story is, up until that point, I would look back and change some elements, but other elements, I think to a degree, I wouldn't change anything, because I like who I am today. And what I'm doing today, for me, gives me purpose.
Yeah. So going back, you've just moved in with your mum.
Yep.
Where do we go from there?
So this is where, knowing me now, you would look back and go, would never have guessed, wouldn't have known. So I'll be as transparent as I physically can be. The door opened, I burst into tears. I hit the floor onto my knees. There was an energy release in me that I just didn't know that I was holding on to. I went in, and spare room, I had literally a couple of bags of clothes. That was all I had with me. And that's all I had is in the sense of belongings. And it was, right, stay here until you get yourself sorted out. I didn't know what sorted out was going to look like. I didn't know how long that was going to take. And I didn't know that there was a mental health breakdown starting at that point. I just knew that there was a lot that I had to do and overcome to try and just regain some kind of control of life. So I moved into the spare room. And at that point, I started to notice that there were fears, worries, doubts, frustrations, anger. All of these emotions were starting to really ramp up at this point, because I was looking at my life like I'd worked for 8 to 9 years within that business, and probably like sort of 12 years, including going through sports science, etc. as well, kind of having that career path change. I'd worked for about 12 years solidly. And it was like, am I actually really starting from the very beginning again? And I felt like everything was being stripped away from me without my say so, and my actions did lead to a lot of that. I'm not going to deny that, but my actions did lead to a lot of that. And looking back, could it have been better? Yes, but I was an inexperienced, early 20-year-old trying to do big things in life that I had no guidance around. So I moved in, and the realization of I'd never had a panic attack before. I'd never had anxiety before. I'd been treated for depression before, whilst I was working all of the hours and in a relationship that was quite brutal. So the first experience of a panic attack and anxiety combined, you honestly feel like you're having a heart attack. You don't know what the sensation is. It feels very alien, and it feels completely out of control, and you don't know how to regain control because you are catastrophizing in that moment. You are thinking that something's happening to you that you're not in control of. So then that became a very, very regular thing, to the point where I would say it was a daily occurrence, numerous times. Numerous times a day I'd be having panic attacks. Anxiety was just a constant. Then the mood and personality disorder started to kick in. Agoraphobia started to kick in. So I was pretty much bound to that room for around about 6 months. I could only walk to the bathroom, which was no more than 1.5 meters, one step out the door and turn left. That's pretty much as far as I could get without having a full-blown panic attack again. Then I'd be dry heaving over the toilet. I'd be blacking out from hyperventilation. This was going on for then 6 months. By this point, doctors were out. I was medicated up to the eyeballs. I was on a carrier bag of medication a month. And to the point where it had numbed me down so much that I was very aware of what was going on, but I just had no control over it. I knew that I was having a panic attack, but I just felt like I couldn't do anything. Literally couldn't do anything. I felt like I was at the mercy of what was going on. It was like I think mentally part of it was, you deserve this. You deserve this for failing. You deserve this for all the things that you've gone through and put yourself through, and you've not come out the other side of it. And I think at that point it was, this is what's happened. This is what it's come to, for me to be able to say that I've tried, and in that attempt didn't succeed. I feel like I was trying to do the stereotypical, have a successful business early in life, get a successful relationship, have children at the right time, those kinds of things. I was trying to do all of the things that they weren't really me as a person. So the mental health breakdown period was around about 18 months, and it stems from agoraphobia through to being tested for schizophrenia and bipolar. I was self-harming, so I was then put onto a crisis team, and the crisis team were visiting me weekly. I was starting to lose the ability to be able to communicate properly, so every now and again, if I speak quite quickly, my brain works a lot quicker than what I can speak, so figuring out now there's a lot of ADHD behind all of this. But aside from all of that, I did get accused of faking it through the support that I was receiving as well. So I was starting to lose the ability to be able to speak properly. I couldn't write, so I was losing the ability to communicate. And then being accused of faking it by the people that were then supporting you, pushed me even further. And then to the point where, trigger warning, there was 2 attempts, and the 2 attempts, luckily, they came at a point, and I say luckily because they came at a very reflective point. They were 2 weeks before my 30th birthday. So from the point of being 28 through to nearly being 30 is just shy of 18, 19 months. That's what I was in every single day. I'd be in bed for 3 days after having a panic attacks. I had no energy whatsoever afterwards. I'd be rebuilding my energy and then trying to just function or have a conversation or deal with things. It got to the point where then I had to go through bankruptcy. So that was added to the list. Divorce, that was added to the list. Access to my son, that was added to the list. And I had no ability to communicate. I had no ability to go outside. I couldn't face majority of the problems that were just mounting and mounting and mounting. And it got to the point where that was, the final the 2 attempts. It was like the final straw for me. It was like, I've got no reason to be here. I've got nothing. I've literally got nothing left. I had £6-7 left in the bank account. I don't know. The way I look back at it now, I think if you were to have shut that door and left me in that room, could things have been different? Very much so. Very much so. I could have not existed at that point, and I could have looked at life and it had been, actually, you know what? Life would have been easy for a lot of other people around me because they wouldn't have had to have dealt with what it is that I was going through. But there was one statistic that I was given by a GP that I was having to have every other day visits by GPs at that stage, just more so for welfare checks. And I remember he came out, he sat on the end of the bed, he looked me directly in the face, and I still remember to this day, that's one of the only things I can actually remember very clearly from that point in time, because everything else, like I say, is compartmentalized. And he sat there and he said, your son will be 75% more likely to take his life if you take yours. Do you want to risk that chance? And I knew, like, even fighting for 18 months of trying to see access, etc., and trying to just be back in his life in some capacity, there wasn't 1% that I'd want to risk that. So that was the turning point for me, where 2 weeks before my 30th, I got to the bathroom mirror, floods of tears in the middle of a panic attack, which became that regular that it kind of became normal. And it's sad to be able to say that somebody could go through that and it becomes a normal thing to experience. I'm sat here now and I've got anxiety running through me right now. Most people would never know, but I deal with it so frequently that operating in that normality for me now is an everyday thing. So I know that it's not going to be something that takes control of me. I am in control, but I just have to do things slightly differently. And that conversation in the mirror when I was with myself on that day was, this needs to be different. This has got to be different. You were not put here to experience what you've experienced and gone through and not use it in some capacity for purpose. How I was able to think of that at that point in time, I do not know, because mentally I was not operating in a sane capacity. I really wasn't. But at that point, something was different.
This is quite a lot to unpack there. You've certainly been through a lot. So essentially you lose all like the material things, then your health. What got you through that?
I think looking back, the hardest thing I had to face every day was not being able to see my son. I think to be able to get through something significant, you need to have an anchor that gives you purpose. And it needs to be stronger than anything that you're currently facing. The value that you hold in that has to be stronger than anything that you're facing. So if it's not a child, if you haven't got children, or if it's not a relationship or a significant other or a partner, if it's not any of those things, you have to look at something in your life that is worth having, that's worth fighting for. I would say the only thing that got me through is knowing that even if I was to never see him again because of the circumstances that I was restricted to seeing him, I didn't ever want him to grow up thinking that his dad was done. I didn't ever want to be that example, because he was 3-4 years old at the time at this point. And there are days, I remember walking down one step at a time of the stairs every few days, trying to push myself to get one step further, to getting out the front door, to getting down to the end of the driveway, to down the bottom of the street. And every single time, every one step was another panic attack, was another blackout, was another hyperventilation, which was 2 to 3 days recovery in bed again. Then I'd get up and try it again, and then it'd be another step. And I don't know if it was celebrating small wins to be able to say, well, actually, it was one more step. It was one step close to the front door. It was one step further. You still don't feel those wins, but you're doing something that was more than the last attempt. And I think it's proving to yourself that things can be scary, things can be fearful, things can be a worry, but you are in control of what you do with that. And even if it feels out of control, one thing that all this has taught me is after going through the mental health breakdown, I've kind of gone through 2 or 3 rediscovery periods in the last 10 to 12 years. But that's just me going through personal growth work. It's reflecting on what has happened, what it is that I might be currently struggling with, and how I can use what's happened in the past as something that helps me in the future. Whatever it is that you do go through is going to feel like the worst thing you've ever experienced at that point in time. And I think so many they don't want to face the pain, they just want it to be resolved. But you have to acknowledge how you got there to begin with, and there has to be a level of self-accountability and responsibility of absorbing and understanding what your actions might have been that's caused or creating what it is that you're struggling with. And it is a very, very self-facing thing that you have to do. It's very mirroring of what it is that the actions that you're taking, because you can wear a mask all day long and fool people all around you and keep saying, yeah, I'm fine, yeah, I'm fine, yeah, I'm fine. But the reality is that none of those people are with you when the doors close at the end of the day and you're sat there on your own in your own 4 walls. That's the reality that you really live in. And it's that reality that's really affecting you. And if that's the one that's not good, but you're telling everybody else around you that it is, that's the person that really needs the work. It's not the one that can wear the mask and smile every day and say, yeah, I'm succeeding in life and I'm achieving things, because that was me from early 20s until late 20s. The reality was I wasn't succeeding. I was drowning in stress, worry, frustration, pain, mental abuse. Like, there was all kinds of things I was going through that I was struggling with. But behind closed doors, I'd never say that to anybody. And I think being closed off, I think probably one of the biggest things is actually growing as a male, growing mentally and maturing in emotional expression. It was always a weakness. I grew up in the era where a man showing emotional resilience in any capacity is or just even expressing in that way is a weakness. Don't show weakness. Don't show people that you're hurting. Don't show people that it's affecting you. Put a brave face on, dig a little deeper, push a little harder. And that got me to the worst place in my entire life. And going through all of that, having my son as an anchor to give me something to focus towards, I knew that every effort, despite how hard it was on me, it would have been, I did not want to be responsible for something that could potentially change his life. I did not want to be that cause. So for me, that was the thing that grounded me every single day in why I was trying.
So that for you was main purpose?
It was at that point in time, it was my only purpose.
Yeah.
At that point in time, it was the only purpose that I had. It was, what can I do today that's going to push me that little bit further forwards, that's going to help me to rediscover. I didn't even know I was needing to rediscover. I didn't know any of this. All I knew was that it couldn't be how it was. I couldn't continue being that person if I was going to stand a chance of seeing him again. I couldn't be that person.
Can we talk about anxiety?
Anything, yeah.
So anxiety is something I've struggled with as well. I know we've had a brief conversation about this, but I've also had a panic attack.
Mm-hmm.
And just one panic attack, and that sent me spiraling. Didn't want to leave the house. Didn't want to be home alone. So I was just wondering what advice you'd give to somebody who's struggling with anxiety, perhaps having panic attacks, and what they could do?
The thing that I've been doing this now I've been coaching for nearly 14 years. And the people that I've been fortunate, and I do say fortunate because I've seen so many people change the quality of their lives after I've worked with them. People go through anxiety and their experiences are very unique to them as an individual. So I always struggle to kind of say, well, if you are going to fix anxiety or face anxiety or try and just regain control of it, it's never a blanket statement, because everybody's experience as to why they experienced anxiety to begin with is unique to them. Do they have similarities? Yeah, 100%. But do those similarities make them any less unique to the individual? No, because how you feel it can be very different to how I feel it. The sensations might be the same, but how you process that, what that means to you, how that has you operate around other people, or the environment that it was that you experienced it in. So the thing for anxiety really is what you're feeling at the point of having an anxiety attack is actually the end result. It's not the start of where anxiety begins. The start of the anxiety is, what is it that you're rejecting, denying, avoiding, trying to avoid to a degree that it doesn't exist? What is it that you're not facing that keeps bringing this feeling of panic, worry, however it is that you're experiencing it? Mine was the whole, feels like you've got somebody's foot pressed into your chest, you can't breathe. That then gives me palpitations, gives me a very tight chest, then starts to have me hyperventilate. The hyperventilation then leads into a full-blown panic attack. Then from there onwards, that can then feel like all kinds of different things. The thing with anxiety is the thing that helps me the most is, it's going to sound like, that sounds like you're skipping a lot of processes to try and figure it out, because I have to do it every single day. I have to figure out, how do I get to the root of what it is that I'm feeling as quick as possible? Because if I avoid what's created the anxiety through multiple times of trying, it's only going to come back, and it comes back harder and stronger every time. So the anxiety side of things is facing the thing, not avoiding the thing that keeps coming up, that's creating that sensation for you. The physical feeling of anxiety is pretty much your body's way of saying to you, this is just me letting you know that there's something going on in here that you've not addressed. But I've got to let you know at this point, after you've already been feeling it. You've been feeling this for however long, days, weeks, months, years, but you've not addressed it. Now I'm letting you know that we're at the point where we can't do that no more. But if you keep getting anxiety attacks, it's what's triggering that. Because that's the bit that most people try to avoid. They don't face it. They just don't want to they don't want to feel that sensation of what it feels like to have an anxiety attack, because it feels like it's completely out of your control. And I think that for a lot of people is the scary thing.
I read a quote recently, which is, what you avoid controls you.
Yeah.
That kind of ringing true with what you're saying there.
Yeah, massively. Because I did try to avoid so many things in the business, so many things in the relationship, so many things in life. I avoided so much to try and paint this picture of what I should have felt like I should have been, or somebody that I should have been. And it couldn't have been further from who I was as an individual. I was the most unhappiest I've ever been in my entire life. I was the most fearful. I was full of dread, worry, anxiety. And when I say anxiety, back then, I didn't know that it was. It was just that feeling of discomfort in your stomach all the time, like those things, those worrying sensations. When it moves to clinical anxiety, it's a whole body experience. It's something that you feel like it's a rush of energy that you can't control, but you don't know where it's going. And then knowing that it is a flood of energy that you're having, my way of dealing with it was, how do I use this? How do I channel this into something that I can try and turn a negative into a positive? Because in my experience, the anxiety, once you start experiencing anxiety, it doesn't actually go away. It suppresses until you're reminded again that there's something that you need to work on. But I think one of the things that I got very good at is I don't avoid the things that I need to work on anymore. That for me is the North Star of That's where the personal development work comes in. That's the thing that I need to focus on. That's the direction that I need to go in. I tend to now run towards the things that I would have avoided in the past. Because the quicker I can get to that, the quicker I can overcome the thing that's been holding me back, the quicker I therefore regain control of how I'm physically feeling.
The question you're asking yourself is, what am I avoiding?
What am I avoiding?
So what would be if you could give a couple of steps to somebody who says, right, okay, I'm feeling anxious, I know I need to face this head on. Is there some kind of steps?
For me personally, I have to regain control of the moment that I'm in first.
Okay.
Because you're not going to think clearly whilst you're in the middle of having an anxiety attack. At that point, your body is in complete fight mode. And it's saying, I want to shut down, I want to avoid, I want to shut the world out. I'm trying to protect you at this point because you've not addressed what needs to be addressed. So you have to regain control of the state that you're in now before you can even try to process what needs to happen. So the first thing you need to really do is regain control of your breathing, regain control of what's currently happening, the environment that you're in, whether that's putting yourself into a quiet space. Find somewhere that you feel safe, you feel secure, you feel protected. It might be that you can have a conversation with somebody that is a safe space for you. It might be a physical safe space. But the biggest thing for me that helps me is, and I've got a friend that will, if he listens to this, and I know he actually does the radio with me, he'll be proud that it's the breathwork side of things, because he's a breathwork coach. And I didn't know that how much that would have an impact on controlling my physical state at that point in time. So a little bit of box breathing, 4 seconds in, 4 seconds hold, 4 seconds out, 4 seconds hold. Repeat that for a few minutes. It helps you regain control of your nervous system. Once you've brought your state back down, you're then in a position to start thinking about, right, why did this happen? What triggered this? What situation around me, what environment, what person, what scenario, whatever it was, what got me to that point? And then ask why. Why did that happen? Why did that trigger happen? So I'll give you an example. For me at the point in time, it was brown envelopes being posted through the door. And still to this day, people are a brown envelope. That's just mail. Yeah, but when you receive bankruptcy, when you receive legal, it's all brown envelopes. Those brown envelopes for me are a huge trigger still to this day. So my thing now is I have to face it as quick as possible. If I know that it's a brown envelope, it can't sit on the counter for the rest of the day, because that affects my state for the rest of the day. I'm anxious, I'm worrying, I'm overspending energy in places that I don't need to expend it. So I open it and I deal with it. And no matter what it is, good or bad, it doesn't make a difference, because whatever's in there is the thing that I need to face. It's actually the brown envelope. It's not what's in there that's the problem, because I know whatever's in there is the thing that's telling me what I need to do. So for me, the anxiety was coming, and I didn't recognize this for a long time, but I recognized it once I got to a point that I knew that it was the sound of the letterbox going and needing to know whether it was a white envelope or a brown envelope. Birthday cards were a little bit different, but the white envelope was fine. Didn't make a difference. The brown envelope was very different. And that instantly triggered a full-blown hyperventing panic attack that I would then black out with. I didn't know that I had to spend many months trying to face it, but I didn't know that the best way to face it was actually to physically face it, rather than somebody else open the mail or somebody else tell me that, oh, it's a brown envelope, or I didn't need to know any of that. I actually need to go, grab it, open it, right. Now deal with whatever's on the inside of it, because I got so used to it being such a negative, such a big life-changing thing that was on the inside of these brown envelopes, that all of a sudden, any brown envelope, didn't matter where it came from, was a problem. So if I was to look back and how do I control the anxiety around that, it wasn't about opening the envelope whilst I'm in a full-blown panic attack, having anxiety. It was, right, you've just been triggered because you know that it's a brown envelope, catch your breathing, bring your state back down, rationalize a little bit. Are you actually in danger right now? Is your life being threatened right now? It's not. So the state that you're in is self-inflicted. Right. I can be accountable to that because I created this. Now, how do I regain control of that physical feeling? Breathe, calm your state, address what's in front of you.
I really like that. And I was just reminded of you going down the steps as well. And each time you're just getting that step forward.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not avoiding going down the steps at all.
No.
Each time you're just trying to go with that extra step, and then down the driveway. So is there a point of you could almost tackle it with like some exposure to it? Or is it better just to go straight on?
I think exposure is a very useful tool if you can manage the level that you're prepared to be exposed to. It's not like jumping off the high board, straight into the deep end and going, well, I've done the hardest part the quickest. You might need to start at the very bottom by just stepping off the edge first and then going up to the first and working your way up. It doesn't mean that it gets any less scary as you move up. It just means that you know that a couple of meters lower than what you were perfectly fine. So the composure is that one step further. One step further, is it going to kill me? Is it going to hurt me? Am I going to feel physical pain from it? No. But is it going to feel uncomfortable? Yes. I can't deny that it's not going to feel uncomfortable, but I can definitely rationalize with that because I already know that every step prior to that felt uncomfortable. So it's evidence. You're giving yourself evidence that you can take one step. You don't have to leap or jump or be launched into anything. You can take one step. There's no time frame on anything if you're prepared to do work on yourself to move forwards. I'm still doing work on myself 14 years later, but I'm definitely not the person that I look back on now and go, well, that person doesn't exist anymore. But that's only because I was prepared to take every single step, and literal. We're not, whether that be stairs or actual steps, it's a step at a time. And I think because I did go through that physical process of trying to regain control of the agoraphobia, that for me is a very, very tangible. It's a very tangible process for me to say that one step matters, no matter what it is that you're doing. It's working that a little bit harder, doing that a little bit more, pushing yourself into just outside of that comfort zone, that if you're stuck somewhere that you are struggling with, it's going to feel uncomfortable to try and get out of it because you've created safety around what it is that you're struggling with. So that's why you stay there as long as possible, because you know what you're experiencing. Doesn't mean that it's easy, but it means that you know what's coming. But because you don't know what's coming that needs to change, that challenge the change, that's the bit that most people say, because I don't know it, I don't want to do it. But it doesn't have to be huge and scary. It can just be one step, one little bit of uncomfort, deal with that, process that, right, okay, did I manage it? 100%. Then just have a little bit of self-assurance in yourself that that one step didn't do what you thought it would do. And after you do that so many times, you start to build the evidence that you can actually believe in yourself and trust your own process. And you start to then become your own support work, your own self-support network. And you can kind of build the resilience inside of yourself, pun intended.
So, because that's quite important as well. So you're taking that physical step, but actually recognizing, I've achieved something today, I've done that, and then using that as motivation to help drive you forward.
The one thing I will say is I think people do not give themselves enough praise for how they see what they win with. I think, and a lot of this could be social media based these days, and obviously the access to the internet that we have now, we're talking, 15 years ago that I was dealing with this. So this was a very different lifestyle back then as to what it is now. Things like this didn't exist when I was going through this. A lot of mental health support didn't exist when I was going through this. So we should actually be a lot better at understanding and be willing to do the work because we have access to so much more now. But I still think a lot of people do the avoiding part because they don't want to do the work. They just want the end result because they see the end result as success or a lavish lifestyle or something that they see in somebody else that they want. But you've got to ask yourself, just because that person has it doesn't mean it's going to make you happy. So you've got to figure out what you need and how that process looks for you from day one. And that starts with a singular step. It could be, today would be the day that if you've avoided, and I'll use physical exercise as and I know this is kind of like a corny process that a lot of people would use, but for me, I had to anchor a lot of my energy in exercise because I don't look at exercise as, it's not my identity. And I think a lot of people do try to use exercise as an identity these days. I use it as a channel to put energy into that helps me mentally and physically understand where I'm at, what I'm capable of. And there's a discipline that you do build in that if you commit to yourself that it's not a bad thing. Like exercising for people, not to a stupidly high extreme, but exercising for people never put somebody in a bad situation. And being able to kind of go back to my sports science education, understanding all of that, getting to reapply that on a day-to-day basis, I started to understand where mental and physical started to kind of cross paths. And I'd never done any kind of mental fitness work, but I'd done a lot of physical fitness work. So the physical fitness came for me easy, but the mental fitness was the thing that I avoided for a long time. And I look at mental health now as more of mental fitness. It's how can I flex that mental muscle to help that advance, help that grow, help that sustain, endure a little bit more if there's something that I want to work on and overcome, or if it's the fact that I just want to improve the quality of my life.
I was watching a interview recently, and this is what reminded me of. So they went around asking people what's their favourite physical exercise. I'd say bench press or 100-metre sprint. And they said, what's the best mental fitness exercise? And nobody could answer. And I just thought that was quite interesting because, like what you were saying, it's not something we think about.
No, it's not.
So could you tell us a little bit about what you do in order to maintain your own mental fitness?
Once I kind of started working through the things that I needed to face, and I do believe a lot of the mental health struggles come from things that we avoid, things that we don't have the skill set to be able to navigate what we need to do in those moments. So they come from struggle. When you start to take the steps, one step at a time, you start to build that self-confidence that you can do the difficult things, which builds a trust in yourself that as you do these things, they start to become, they become part of you that you never knew existed. They become something that you say, actually, you know what, the hard times, they're hard, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't define me as the person. The hard doesn't define me. What I do with the hard defines me. So if I retract from that, if I put the boundaries up, put the doors up, put the shutters go up, then you're going to be stuck for a very long time at that point, because there is something that's telling you that on the other side of that, there is a little bit more, but that little bit more is probably just outside of your reach right now. And that's fine if that's where you're at right now. But if you wanted to experience what that little bit more is, and that might be, and I don't mean more as in value-wise, I mean more as in you might want more peace in life, you might want more calm in life, you might want more stability, all of these other things. More doesn't have to physically mean like an expansion of something. It could just be something that is a higher quality, a higher value to you. When you start looking at more, you start to say, well, do I really look at myself in my everyday life as this is the type of lifestyle that I want to be living? Have I built this around what I want or what somebody else wants? For me, my mental fitness is very much rooted in physical activity. So I chose to come off all of the medication probably around about the 2-year mark. And that was a personal choice because I wanted to be in complete control of what it was that I was experiencing. So and this is probably more the extreme side of me needing that self-reassurance that I was in control. So I came off all of the medication and it was, right, this is now on you. This is on you. What you experience is 100% your experience, not dampened by medication, not changed thought by anything else. This experience is now your 100% experience. Are you prepared to accept responsibility for that? Yes, I am. Right, okay. Because I'm okay to accept responsibility with that, I can then start looking at what do I need to change in my day-to-day life that will start to improve the outcome. Not completely change, but just improve step by step. So exercise was a big thing for me because mentally it does teach you resilience, endurance. It does teach you discipline. But it also gave me something to put energy into that I didn't know how to get rid of. Anger, frustrations. There's one thing that I will always say, every single person that goes into a gym, they have more similarities than what most people think, because everybody in there in some capacity is in there for self-improvement. It's not vanity or ego. Yes, some do go down that route. but everybody is in there in some capacity for self-improvement. And if you look around in a gym, any gym, and go, every person in here right now is looking to better themselves in some way, shape, or form, physically, mentally, whatever that may be, it becomes less daunting to take those big steps, because you start to see that actually I'm not alone. I'm not the only person that's physically experiencing this. Chances are there might be 2 or 3 people stood next to you on other treadmills around you, or in the free weight section, that are dealing with anxiety, panic attacks, mood and personality disorder, whatever it may be, mental health in itself. They are there for a reason, and that reason brings people a lot closer together if they're more open about what they're experiencing, because people can be supporting of other people. So the gym for me was really about, it was just an opening. It was a door that was opening. The gym has never been my identity, and it's not me as a person. Some people would look at me and go, well, you know, you're quite a big guy. How can you not say that the gym is part of your identity? It's just because, let's just say I have a lot of frustrations that I have to work through. So I'm reflective of my efforts and energies. I'm never been, I mean, you could go onto any of my social medias and go, well, this guy doesn't post egotistical, half-naked photos. He doesn't make his social media about his appearance or his presence in that sort. I could kind of get it now. You know, I am somebody that has bench pressed a lot of weight. I'm somebody that's deadlifted a lot of weight. I'm somebody that has squat a lot of weight. But that's just because it gives me a focus to put energy into. I don't see it as, for me, it's a vessel. It's a vehicle that gets me somewhere. Remove the exercise, my mental health breaks down very quickly. And this is self-reliant mental health. Now, this isn't relying on therapy or medication or anything like that. For me, if exercise is removed and routine is removed, that for me is a huge struggle. But the big avoidance would be if I don't do the mental fitness work, so the mental health work. If I carry on avoiding that, it doesn't matter how, you can exercise all you like, but if you keep telling yourself, there's no problems, life's never going to get any better. You might look a bit better, but life doesn't get any better.
So what makes up mental fitness for you?
There's a few elements. It's not drastic. It's just, I look at food as being sensible. I'm not one of these fitness coaches that will turn around and be like, it has to be a certain way, or these extremes of eliminating certain things. For me, food is as much of an enjoyment as it is something that helps me with energy balance. It helps me with how I'm physically feeling. So I look at food as, it's an input. It's an input that helps drive the vehicle. The exercise is the momentum of that vehicle. So if I'm moving well, if I'm, let's say, focused on a training program, it gives me something to use that energy and that fuel for. But none of that exists in a world where I don't have structure and routine. So for me, it's all right saying, well, just exercise or just eat better. That's just, it's surface level. That doesn't solve problems. Because if then you don't give yourself space and time to process, mentally recover, maybe it's learning. Maybe your day has to have exercise at a certain point, food at certain times, rest at certain times, and even connective points. So being with family members, friends, relationships, like connecting with people. Like, there are certain elements in my days and weeks that are purposely there that help me become who I want to become. And you remove certain elements of that and I'll feel it. I think one of the biggest things that you can do is set up some structure. Set up some structure, move, be mindful of what you put inside of your body, but not to an extreme, but just be mindful, like treat yourself like an adult. You know, I always say, like, treat food like an adult. If you eat like a child, expect things to be a little bit playful. You know, if you're looking at wanting life to be extremely different in a very short space of time, so going to the other end of the scale, I'd probably say the first thing you need to really do is we need to gain some kind of realistic expectation of what needs to change right now. Because if you make it too big, you're never going to want to change it. But if you make it manageable, just slightly uncomfortable, but manageable, then you can do a lot in a short space of time if you take structured steps.
So it's building that structure and identifying that goal.
Yeah.
I was watching, again, another interview, Kobe Bryant.
Yep.
He was saying that everybody's got this idea that they want to climb Mount Everest, and they get to the bottom and look up and they go, I'm not climbing Mount Everest. But then as they look down, they can see that first step. So it's about looking at identifying that goal,
Mm-hmm.
and then looking at that first step. So how does somebody go about, I guess, identifying that goal and that purpose?
I think a lot of it comes down to reverse engineering. And I think this would be a kind of like a perfect way to kind of like summarize this whole conversation is when you look at the lifestyle that you've got now, and maybe it's not one that you thought you'd be living, or you could see that it could be better, or you just want more out of life. You kind of need to know what is going to make you happy and reverse engineer it from there. And that might be a hard question to ask somebody that is struggling. What's going to make you happy? Well, just not feel like I'm struggling. Yeah, but we need to figure out why. We need to figure out what's going to give you purpose every single day, what's going to give you a direction. Because if you've got direction, you've got something to aim for, work for, you can see the horizon. If you've got no direction, you don't know where to place that first foot. You don't know what to do. So the structure comes from reverse engineering what the outcome is. And I think if you put a realistic outcome in, it's an unrealistic outcome could be, I want to be financially free in the next 12 months. But at the minute you're working maybe for minimum wage, all the hours that you can. How is it realistic? If you're working all the hours that you've currently got for minimum wage, how are you going to become a millionaire in 12 months? So you look at the realistic part of it. Well, what could change my outcome right now? Could I ask for the pay rise? Could I get a different job, still work the same hours, which increases the income? Could I then take a day reduction in the week to gain a day back, but still earn the same amount of money? Therefore, now I've got more personal time that I could then work on a project that could then be the catalyst that works you towards being a millionaire. There's always a process in reverse engineering something. And I feel like to be who you want to become, you have to reverse engineer what that looks like. So I know the version of me that I'm happy with, and I am happy now, is somebody that exercises regularly. There is no stipulation if that has to be 3 days a week or 5 days a week. It doesn't have to be just lifting big weights. It can be whatever I feel like it needs to be at that point in time, so long as I'm enjoying it. It means having a day-to-day structure that feels like things like this. I can pour something back into with value, but also it feels like it's a step forwards in spreading a message, explaining to people that things can be different. But it's also, I never knew that I'd be on a radio pretty much weekly, on a radio show. I never knew that I'd be being asked onto podcasts. I never knew that I'd be sharing my story to this level. If you'd have asked me this 14 years ago when I was looking in a mirror trying to figure out what I was doing next. But all I knew back then is the version of me that is happier is one who, he does exercise, he does eat better, he isn't afraid to challenge his thoughts, he does make a conscious and continuous effort to place one foot in front of the other, and whatever that may be, but also be realistic in, if you are placing one foot in front of the other, sometimes journeys take a while. Sometimes it could be a short journey. Sometimes it's the smaller the problem, the shorter the journey. The bigger the problem, the bigger the journey. It could take you a while to overcome something, and that's fine so long as you keep taking those efforts and making those steps. So reverse engineer the process and ask yourself, what do I want life to look like? Be realistic with it. It doesn't mean that you can't move the goalpost when you get to that point, but it gives you a direction to work on something. Reverse engineer it. Ask yourself the big questions. What do I need to do? Who do I need to become? What actions does that person take day in, day out that gives them that lifestyle? Okay, that's what I'll start doing. But I don't have to do it all from day one. I do one thing from day one. I'll do that. Right, tomorrow, I'll do the next thing from day one to move to day two. And just keep placing those steps one after another. And you do get there. You don't realize that you get there, but you get there. And then all of a sudden you look back and go, oh, hold on a minute. I'm a lot further away from where I used to be. Wonder where I can go. And literally then it's like you've got the entire world at your feet. Go wherever you want.
I think what you just said is taking that step back is really useful and something that I don't do enough. Because often I'm trying to do my podcast, I'm trying to do my coaching, trying to do my wellbeing workshops. And I get frustrated with myself that I should be doing more.
Mm.
I take a step back. Okay, I start my podcast in April with Hayden. I was so incredibly nervous. I think if you can only see the top half, if you saw my bottom half, I was probably shaking. And then like standing up, doing my first wellbeing workshop at a local charity. Again, I was shaking, terrified. But I have gradually been working on myself, doing these podcasts, doing them in person, doing public speaking, and then actually I take a step back and actually, you know what, James, you have actually achieved a lot. And my main struggle was 2019, when I was in like the depths of anxiety, and getting through each and every day was just a complete and utter struggle, and I was just mentally and physically drained and completely just fed up. And I just think I am that total different person now. And I think it's just recognising that we're all works in progress. And I guess the goal is to just try and continually get better, even though when you look at it day by day, there might be some frustration there.
I think a good way to end this would be the people that say to you, well, when is enough enough? There's only you that can answer that, because they're viewing your life through a lens that they might not be prepared to look through. And if they aren't prepared to look through that lens and say to themselves, well, actually, you know what, I'd have been happier with not having to take those actions that person's taking, because my life would have been happy with half of what they've done. But did they take those steps? Or are they just viewing what other people have done and criticizing themselves? So only you know what will make you happy. Some people, that's a lot. Some people, it's not a lot. But does it make it any less important to the individual? Absolutely not. So if you want life to change, if you want your circumstance to change, if you want to build upon yourself in a way where it's kind of like, it's definitive that the outcome will be completely different. You know that the outcome would be completely different. There's an acknowledgement and a self-trust that you'll first have to develop with yourself, that actually, you know what, it becomes a skill set that most people don't do. And when you've got that, you're unstoppable. It's just what do you want to apply it to next? And then see the goal, see the vision. Who do I want to become? Reverse engineer that process. Ask the questions. The biggest thing you could do is ask yourself the questions that need the hard, tough questions that you would avoid. And to get there, just keep putting one foot in front of the other. Keep taking those steps.
I really like that. A really nice way to summarise. So the last question that I ask on this podcast is, what does mental resilience mean to you?
Mental resilience for me it's waking up every single day knowing that my purpose outweighs pain, struggle, frustrations, worry, anxiety, depression, mood and personality, whatever it may be. My purpose outweighs all of it. And when I know that, because it's my purpose and nobody else's, for me, your purpose could be family. It could be a child. It could be your relationship. It could be whatever you want it to be. But resilience for me is knowing that I am stronger than any of the struggles that I will face, because I have been in somewhere that I would class as one of the hardest places that I could ever experience. Yes, there are harder. I get that. But I haven't experienced those. But I know in my world, I am in control. So resilience for me is knowing that I do trust myself.
Well, Andy, thank you very much for being on the guest. I've really, really enjoyed that.
Cheers.
Thank you.